Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows come the best indie podcasts.
Hi guys, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are the hosts of The Book of the Dead, a true crime podcast based out of New Jersey, where we tell you about the most obscure cases that you may have never heard of. So join us in the Book of the Dead library for another chapter of The Book of the Dead wherever you get your podcasts. Bye guys.
Hey, I have a potty mouth, and I am not afraid to use it. Should colorful language offend you? I'm just not your gal. Listener discretion advised. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. I have a case this episode that is fresh out of the headlines, and it really pisses me off. My friend Jen from our True Crime Podcast brought it to my attention. Part of it is about another person who's been wreaking havoc for the LGBTQ community, and especially trans people. This person, who before Jen I had never heard of before, is on mainstream social media platforms. Now, I'm not going to bore you with my life right now, and y'all know where to find me on the socials. You know about my Patreon, so we're just going to get right into the case that I'm upset about. But let me warn you, the case just happened the beginning of February 2024, so there's not too much information out there about the case, and cops really aren't releasing much, and there is no resolution to it. Stochastic terrorism. That's another new term for me that breeds hate. If, like me, you haven't heard that term before, what it means is public demonization of a person or group resulting in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable but whose specifics cannot be predicted. Okay. Where can you find effects of stochastic terrorism? Well, you might be surprised, but you can find a bunch of it on TikTok and X, formerly Twitter apps. In particular under the handle Libs of TikTok, which with that name I would believe it was, a liberal group. And that's exactly what the person behind it wants you to believe. Actually, it's quite the opposite. It's headed by an ultra-conservative woman with her head up her ass, apparently. Her name is Chaya Raichik. And if I'm mispronouncing her name, I don't really care, because I am not a fan. I'm not a fan of anyone who targets marginalized groups and spreads hate. But you guys already know that about me. What Libs of TikTok does is repost content created by liberals and left-wing people, but she changes them up to mock them, and then she gives her own derogatory comments about the original post. Her politics are far right, and she dribbles tons of anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. This Chaya Raichik woman was even at the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And when interviewed by Tucker Carlson and asked about that day, where people died, mind you, she laughed about it. She even tells Tucker she's a bad person and toxic. She sounds awesome, right? Even with her 2 million plus followers, which is an absurd amount, by the way, Chaya hid behind her keyboard as a troll for at least a year until she was outed by a software developer named Travis Brown and Washington Post journalist Taylor Lorenz. They got to the bottom of who this bitch is, and they announced it to the world. Good for them. It's too easy for trolls to hide in the comfort of their own homes and pick apart others. So now that she's been uncovered, she's been very vocal everywhere. And she thinks what she's doing is hilarious. What's actually funny, though, is she presents as a white woman, but she's an Orthodox Jew. Her last name, Raichik, which is her maiden name, is Argentine Jew, and her husband were married in Israel. Now, it would seem to me with all the anti-Semitism, violence, and hate that Jewish folks have had to endure, she is part of a marginalized community. So why the fuck are people who are from marginalized communities who have suffered oppression Why are they attacking other communities? It makes no damn sense to me. Am I alone in this, or do you all agree? Okay, so what else has Chaya done that's caused real problems for others? And you may be saying to yourself, hey CJ, this is supposed to be an episode about the murder of Nex Benedict. Patience, my dear warriors. It is. And hopefully you'll see the relevance in my exposing libs of TikTok soon. Chaya likes to use her TikTok creator platform to attack proudly out LGBTQ teachers. She calls them pedophiles and groomers. A science teacher in Texas had some fun and dressed in drag for a few school events. Chaya put him on blast. She accused him of drag fetishes, and he was suspended from his job. Thankfully, his students went to bat for him, and they rallied for him to keep his job. Another trans man teacher wanted to educate their students about why he was now a he, and not the female teacher that used to present the class to them. The teacher showed a slideshow explaining that not all people are born into the correct bodies. The teacher explained what being transgender is and what non-binary is, and this is so his or their correct pronouns would be respected. Everything was very educational for the older students. If my child was old enough, I'd totally sign off on them learning real-world stuff like that. Hell, I'd probably teach it to my child myself. Well, Chaya's ears got a hold of this information about the teacher, and she started to post that this teacher was trying to turn their students into trans kids. Because anyone, an adult, teen, or young child, can watch a slideshow or a video about what transgender or non-binary is, and automatically they'll become transgender or non-binary. I watched an awful lot of Yogi Bear when I was a child. That's why I now live in Jellystone Park and steal picnic baskets for a living. I mean, seriously. Chaya Raychick is supposed to be an educated woman. This again is another case where I'd much rather have common sense than book smarts. Chaya has posted locations of various different drag show events, and the Proud Boys rated them. You know, I mentioned the Proud Boys in the What the Fuck is a TERF episode. In case you're not sure what the Proud Boys are, they're an exclusively male North American far-right neo-fascist militant organization, and they promote and engage in political violence. They storm, they raid, they cause great destruction for people of ethnicity and for the LGBTQ people. While Chaya's hate targets mostly LGBTQ people, especially trans folk, she doesn't limit herself. She goes after the Black community as well, according to the Southern Poverty Law website, which tracks many hate organizations. Chaya has said that George Floyd was not murdered by white police officer Derek Chauvin, and she denies the existence of systemic racism. She's a minority herself in two areas. First, she's a woman, and second, she's Jewish. So how she feels justified with her attacks, I'll never understand. Chaya has inspired upwards of 21 bomb threats in schools, especially those who offer racially and LGBTQ inclusive curriculums, hospitals that offer transitional surgeries, which libs of TikTok call hysterectomies for children, and libraries that might feature books read by drag queens, and oh my God, books that have pornographic content. Pornographic content. That's a very loose term. Like kissing? I remember reading Judy Blume's Forever. Is that pornographic content? I'm sure in her eyes it would be. Now, I'm not saying that Chaya herself has carried out the acts, but her online spiels are pretty much a call to action for these heinous campaigns. Remember what I said stochastic terrorism is: the public demonization of a person or group resulting in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable but whose specifics cannot be predicted. That is Chaya Raychick. She is clearly the definition of stochastic terrorism, with her hateful rhetoric calculated to promote violence in a good portion of her followers. Chaya, who is originally from Southern California, one of the most liberal states, is apparently now living in New York, yet another pretty liberal state. But she was contacted by Oklahoma State School Superintendent Ryan Walters, and she was asked to be on Oklahoma State's Library Media Advisory Board. Hello! This salty bitch was a realtor. What exactly is her skill set for this position? And she doesn't even live in that freaking state. Nor does she have kids that attend school in that state. Ryan Walters, the superintendent, he's not that super, apparently asked Chaya because of her right-wing extremism and what he considered her woke values. Ryan Walters offered Chaya the job, which is a state agency job, because he said, what we wanted to do was bring in someone who has been a national leader in exposing what's going on in our schools. She has really shown a spotlight nationally, and frankly, with a lot of our Oklahoma teachers as well. When liberals attack, you know you're on the right track. He continued by saying he's proud to have Chaya on board. She has struck a nerve at the heart of extremism. We will make our schools better. Oh, really, Ryan Walters? Letting your students get picked on and die? It doesn't seem to be a way to make your schools better, you idiot. He needs to lose his job in a big-ass way. He has obviously let his politics and possibly religion interfere with his work. Tyler Wren was a teacher for the Owasso School District located in Tulsa County in Owasso, Oklahoma. Tyler claimed to be an anarchist. He told his followers on TikTok, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, fuck them. I'm your parents now. His students, especially those who are LGBTQ+, had a place with him where they felt safe and protected. But Chaya Raychek found out about Tyler Wren, and she began a social attack on this teacher. Because of the heat put upon him by libs of TikTok, Tyler received multiple death threats, and he was forced to resign in April 2022 from the Owasso School District. This leads us into the death of Nex Benedict. 16-year-old gender non-conforming Nex Benedict had been considered part of the LGBTQ community, where they were a sophomore or grade 10 at Owasso High School. Teacher Tyler Wren would have been a safe haven for Nex had he still been allowed to teach there. Nex was angry when Tyler essentially lost his job. Nex knew Tyler was about letting people be who they were and live their truths. But as a thoughtful, artistic, animal-loving person, Nex really didn't have many to turn to for support after Tyler left. At the start of 2023, Nex started to be bullied for being gender non-conforming. Now, the state of Oklahoma has a pretty horrendous track record for supporting the LGBTQ community and upholding any rights we have that are recognized federally, especially for trans people. In fact, one of the laws first passed was the whole bathroom gender thing by their governor, Kevin Stitt. If a young person identified as trans or gender nonconforming, they still had to use bathrooms that was geared to their assigned birth gender and not the gender in which they identified. This governor keeps trying to enact more bills that strictly prohibit trans folk from having any protection rights. He's even gone as far as to put into writing that men and women are whatever bodies they're born into. If you come out of your mama with a penis, then you're male forever. It just doesn't matter what your struggles are as a human. And it just doesn't matter if you're uncomfortable being that person. Everything is black and white for this governor. He has even banned gender-affirming care. Well, come on, it is the South. But truly, it's time the Southern states get their shit together and progress to the year 2024. These politicians need to take their Bible-thumping heads out of their asses and realize that people are uniquely different, and it's okay. And for shit's sakes, politicians, You need to quit mixing your religious ideologies and your politics. That's just a toxic combination. So Nex had been picked on at school for being who they were and living their truth for about a year. Nex lived with their grandmother, Sue. Nex had told Sue, who fully supported who Nex was, about the bullies. And Sue told Nex, "You've got to be strong and look the other way, because these people don't know who you are." Nex's grandmother, who was also their legal guardian, had no idea how bad the bullying had gotten. On February 7, 2024, Nex was cornered in the girls' bathroom by 3 older girls who were upperclassmen. Then Nex was pushed to the ground where they hit their head. One girl is said to have bashed Nex's head repeatedly into the bathroom floor. The fight was only said to have lasted a few minutes, and it was broken up by other students and a teacher. There are conflicting statements that Nex was unable to get up and walk themselves to the nurse's office, and they had to have assistance to get there. Other statements from the school board, of course, said that all of the young people involved in the altercation were able to walk to the nurse's office and the assistant principal's office under their own power. Sounds like a cover yo ass statement from the school district. Oh, but it would seem that the school had no problem giving Nex, who by the way was a straight A student, a 2-week suspension. And Nex's grandmother, Sue, who was much more of a mother, was called to come pick up Nex. Sue took Nex to the hospital to be examined after the school district's nurse excused all of the fight's participants, believing that everyone was just fine. The nurse did not call an ambulance, in spite of Nex's head being conked onto the bathroom floor and a number of bruises on Nex's face and eyes. It's important to remember, all educators and medical personnel are mandated reporters. Someone with authority should have really initially called the police or child protective services, a principal, assistant principal, a nurse, a teacher. Someone should have called the police or child protective services to really cover their own asses, should something more come of the situation later. It's so important to document everything, especially when you work with children. Nex sent a text to a friend after their hospital visit, which read, "I got jumped at school, 3-on-1, had to go to the ER. They had been bullying me and my friends, and I got tired of it, so I poured water on them, and all 3 of them came after me. School did not report to the police and is probably getting sued." While still at the hospital, Sue called the police to file a report. Nex was discharged from the hospital that same evening. Sue then took Nex home, and Nex had difficulty sleeping. Nex finally fell asleep to some music. The following day, paramedics were dispatched to Nex's home for a medical emergency. Nex was transported via ambulance back to the hospital, where they died. Police and the medical examiner claimed Nex's death was not on account of the school beating, but probably from some underlying existing medical problem. To that, I say bullshit. Now you're probably wondering what Chaya Raychik had to do with Nex. Chaya will claim absolutely nothing, because she's an outstanding citizen who's raising her children with tolerance and acceptance for all, said no one ever. Well, Chaya is taking heat over Nex's death, partly because of attacking their beloved teacher Tyler Wren. Because honestly, who knows? Tyler might have been able to protect Nex from the violence, and at very least been a sounding board for all of the bullying Nex was enduring. And teacher Tyler Wren is not the only person in Oklahoma, in that area, that Chaya has attacked. Chaya is also guilty of inspiring bomb threats to a Tulsa public school librarian over some books they kept in their library. For someone who doesn't even live in that fucking state, Chaya's getting around with her hateful rhetoric. Chaya isn't the only one under the microscope, though, thankfully. But the extreme right-wing politicians and the administrators are being looked at more closely, too. And that definitely needs to happen. It's just awfully sad that our children need to die before any type of positive change can happen. These same law and rule makers need to be providing safe and nurturing learning institutions for children. All children. It's important to know of stories such as Nex's and to inform others of them. We are the ones who select the people to represent our voices in each of our states. By letting politicians like Governor of Oklahoma Kevin Stitt and administrators like Ryan Walters remain in their jobs, we're saying we're okay with them helping to kill our children. We are okay with them appointing extremists with absolutely no experience in the field they're appointed to. We are okay with bringing in hateful people who incite fear and uprising that don't even live in our state. Well, we might as well appoint neo-Nazis and white supremacists to police the halls of every school in this nation. Chaya would probably love it. What she does is really no different than what they do. Thrive on hurting others. And not one of them can see it's not about right or left. It's not about conservative or liberal. It's not about black and white. It's not about straight or whatever your sexual identity might be. It's not about gender identity. It's about respecting the human race and living in harmony. So, was Nex's death a hate crime? We don't know 100% if it was or not. But if the adults involved in the decision-making are any indicator, I'd say it definitely was. As the time goes by and more is learned, I'll try to give you an update. I'm sure I'll get some hate messages as I did for the What the Fuck is a Turf episode. But truly knowing the story behind what's going on in Oklahoma, it's worth it to me. Hey there, warriors. Some updates have come out since I recorded this episode, and I'd like to add in the audio from Tik Tok Influencer V of Under the Desk News. V is incredible, and I love their posts. Since I'm not really an avid viewer of TikTok, Jen from, you guessed it, our True Crime Podcast, introduced me to V's account, and I dig it, guys. Please check out V on TikTok as Under the Desk News, and please listen to the update V presents on Nex's case.
This is an update on the death of Nex Benedict. Today, the Owasso Police Department released some of the body cam footage from when they met with Nex at the hospital, some of the 911 call, and some of the camera footage from the high school. Per my followers' request, I'm not going to show any pictures or video. We're going to talk through them, but if you want to watch these yourself, I suggest that you do. We're going to start with the camera outside the bathroom. You can watch Nex go into the bathroom. You watch other girls go into the bathroom. About 2 minutes elapses. 4 girls come out of the bathroom with their arms swinging, looking totally fine. A couple more people come out of the bathroom. The teachers are going back and forth. Early reporting said that all the kids that were in the bathroom during the fight were able to walk themselves to the office. Now, 4 of those girls do walk away just fine. It is several minutes later that Nex is escorted to the nurse's office by a resource officer. And if and when you watch the video, you will see Nex come out of the bathroom and is sort of leaning to the right the whole time they're coming down the hallway. They stumble before they go into the office. They're walking kind of like the way that a person walks when they're trying to pretend that they're not drunk. To be double clear, Nex was not drunk, but they were walking like they were disoriented. Next, we'll talk about the body cam footage from when Nex was visited by a police officer in the hospital. This video was edited. And it says right on the bottom, edited by Owasco Police Department. It is not a complete video. Nex was evaluated at school by the nurse, who said that they weren't going to call an ambulance, but suggested that Nex's parent take them to the hospital for more testing. When Nex arrived at the hospital, they asked for police to come and take a police report. This body cam footage shows some of the interaction that the police had with Nex. Nex is laying in the hospital bed. Their parent is beside them, and explaining that girls that they did not know or hang out with had been making fun of them for months for the way that they dress. Then Nex went into the bathroom, was laughing with their friends. These same girls started making fun of them for the way that they laugh. Nex splashed the girls with some water, and one of the girls started swinging at Nex. Nex says they were able to push one of the girls into a paper towel dispenser, but the girls got Nex's legs out from underneath them and bashed their head into the ground. Nex also says the girls beat them so badly that they blacked out for a while. When Nex tells this police officer that they want to file assault charges against the girls, the police officer somewhat unusually tries to dissuade Nex from filing that report. The cop goes on to say that these girls had the freedom of speech to bully Nex. They could use their words however they wanted to, but in fact, the first person to start the fight, the first assault that happened, was when Nex splashed the girls with water. The police tell Nex that they would be considered an offender just as much as a victim, and Nex says they still want to file the assault charges. The cop continues to try to dissuade Nex from filing charges, claiming that it wouldn't be good for Nex, and that, in fact, these girls were just defending themselves. Now, even in the state of Oklahoma, defense has its limits. There's a thing called proportionate response, which means, yes, you have the right to defend yourself, but your response needs to be proportionate. So having water splashed on you does not equate to beating somebody until they black out. That is where the video cuts off. We do not hear any more of the interaction between the police and Nex or their parent. Next, I'm going to talk about the 911 call the day after the assault. This part is the most difficult. The day after the fight at the high school, Nex's mother calls 911 and says that she needs medics urgently. She tells the operator that Nex is short of breath and posturing. I'm going to show you a drawing. It's not scary, but it will help explain what posturing looks like. It can happen when somebody's having a stroke or some sort of brain trauma, and it's when they tuck their hands in like this or down like this. We've seen this happen on football fields before when somebody takes a tackle too hard. And that pose and the shortness of breath and the eyes rolling back in the head are all symptoms of brain injuries or disruptions to brain activity. The 911 operator then says, I don't care if they do, but do they do drugs? And Nex's mother says, no, they don't. And then says, do they vape or anything else? And Nex's mother says, yes, they've vaped before. That's where the call cuts off. That's all that we hear in the 911 call. Now let's talk about the police putting out a statement saying that preliminary evidence shows that Nex Benedict's death was not a result of trauma. This is not a quote from the medical examiner. This is the police's interpretation of a part of the autopsy that they saw. They have not released the medical examiner's writings. The medical examiner did not testify that that was true. This is the police reading the medical examiner's writings and interpreting it to say that likely the cause of death is going to come back and it's not going to say trauma. Let me tell you why this is important wording. Cause of death is a very interesting thing that happens, and the words that they write on the page don't always totally make sense. So let's look at why cause of death would be listed as trauma. Traumatic deaths are classified as mechanical, thermal, chemical, or electrical. Mechanical deaths are further divided into blunt and sharp categories. So it would be something like if someone took an axe to the face, they might call that death by trauma. But the cause of death might not be listed as trauma because the cause of death is brain death or cardiac arrest. So having that cause of death be brain death or cardiac arrest doesn't mean that it wasn't connected to the events at the high school. If Nex had died in that bathroom, then the cause of death may have been trauma, blunt force trauma to the head. But since it happened the next day, it may be they got a head or brain injury and then the next day experienced brain death or cardiac arrest. That is actually the clarification we're waiting on, not if the events at the high school had something to do with this child's death. So them saying that Nex Benedict did not die as a result of trauma is the police's opinion, and it is an incomplete thought because the ME maybe is going to list the cause of death as cardiac arrest, maybe is going to list it as brain bleed. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't connected to the events. It's just maybe not going to be listed as trauma the way it would have been listed as trauma if this child had died on the bathroom floor. Now moving into the fact that some folks are trying to say that it's going to come back that this kid overdosed on fentanyl or took all of their pain medicines to commit suicide. If that happened, I feel like we would know. If they gave 30 pills and there are no pills left, that would have come out. If they had an allergic reaction to the medicine, that would have come out. And it wouldn't have necessarily looked like posturing or any of the symptoms that Nex's mother described on that 911 call. At this point, to me, the question is not, did the beating of this child contribute to the death of this child? What the question is going to be is there a criminal or civil liability or charges that will be brought forth for the people involved? And that is something that the police need to continue their investigation on, that they have to wait for the autopsy results to be fully released for, and that they are continuing to interview the witnesses that were in that bathroom to build a case about. The police, for saying that this death was not a result of trauma, have also said that that doesn't mean that murder charges are off the table. So we are still waiting for a lot of information. A lot of folks want this to go away. They want this to be over. They want an easy answer. They want it to be somebody else's fault. That's just not how this kind of stuff works.
I just want to thank V for giving me permission to use her audio. Thanks, V. Rest in power, Nex. I don't have a true crime quickie for you this episode. I'm sorry, guys. This one had really worked me up, and I just didn't want to put additional stuff into this episode. I love you, Rainbow Warriors. You matter. And remember, it's not a crime to live your truth. Unless you live in Oklahoma, apparently. Fuck you, Ryan Walters and Governor Twit. Oh, and you too, Shia Raychick, you troublemaking piece of crap.